They told you to share. Share your ideas, share your struggles, share your dreams. From childhood, you were conditioned to believe that speaking your goals aloud would bring them to life, that the more people knew of your intentions, the more accountable you'd be, that telling the world was the first step toward achievement. But what if I told you the opposite is true? What if the very act of sharing your goals was the surest way to poison them? Niccolo Machiavelli understood something our modern age has forgotten. Power is not born from exposure, it is born in silence, quiet intention, hidden resolve. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be lacking." And I will take that one step further. It is much safer to be silent than to be understood, especially when your ambitions are still in seed form. In this world of noise, those who hold their tongue command more than those who speak. Look around. We live in a culture obsessed with declarations. A man cannot make a decision without tweeting it. A woman cannot dream without broadcasting it. And in this compulsion to share, they leak the very thing that makes their goals powerful, their mystery. A goal spoken too soon is a goal robbed of force. Why? Because the moment it leaves your mouth, it enters the realm of judgment, resistance, and interference. You awaken forces you do not yet see: envy, doubt, dismissal. People will not applaud you. They will begin to measure you, to weigh you, to doubt you, and worse, you will begin to perform for them rather than build for yourself. When you speak your goals prematurely, you invite false rewards, praise, encouragement, a pat on the back for something you haven't yet earned. Your mind confuses that praise with accomplishment, and the fire that was once driving you, it fades. Why continue climbing if they're already clapping? Machiavelli warned us not just of enemies, but of perceptions. A prudent man, he said, should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who have been supreme. But the greats did not shout their ascent. They moved in calculated silence. They built behind veils. They revealed their power only when it was too late for their rivals to react. So why do modern minds crave this need to announce? It is weakness disguised as boldness. It is fear masked as confidence. The insecure man shares his goals to feel validated. The strategic man shares nothing. He lets the world assume, and then he breaks their assumptions. Have you noticed this? That those who talk the most often do the least. That the loudest voices in the room rarely hold the most power. There's a reason for this. Talking is easy. Action is difficult. Silence is terrifying to those who lack inner strength. But to the Machiavellian mind, silence is home. Silence is strength. Silence is control. Let me ask you, have you ever told someone your goal and suddenly felt less motivated to pursue it? Have you ever announced your plans only to watch them unravel in front of your eyes? That is no accident. That is the cost of early exposure, because the moment you declare your ambition, you invite scrutiny, and scrutiny kills momentum. People will ask questions you're not ready to answer. They'll raise doubts you're not prepared to confront. They'll mirror their own limitations onto your vision, and if you're not careful, you'll start to believe them. Do not give them that power. A lion does not explain its hunt. A fox does not announce its move. The true strategist moves in silence, not because he fears being seen, but because he understands that being seen too early is a form of weakness. There is a passage in The Prince where Machiavelli writes, "It is necessary for a prince to learn how not to be good." In other words, to understand when the virtues of the world, openness, vulnerability, transparency, must be discarded for the sake of the mission. Sharing your goals is considered virtuous, but it is not strategic. And in the world of power, strategy devours virtue. This is not a call to paranoia, it is a call to wisdom. Your goals are sacred, and sacred things are not thrown into the streets for all to trample. You do not unveil a masterpiece while it is still being painted. You do not expose a building's foundation to the storm while it is still being laid. So what do you do instead? You protect the process. You nurture it in darkness. You build your ambition like an underground city, quietly, brick by brick, until one day the doors open and the world is left speechless. Because you did not tell them, you showed them. The man who speaks less holds more cards. The man who is underestimated is given room to grow. The man who moves without noise is free from interference. And the man who values silence over applause, he is dangerous, because no one sees him coming. There is another danger, one even more insidious. When you share your goals, you begin to internalize them as identity instead of strategy. You start saying, "I am a writer," instead of "I am becoming a writer." You say, "I will build a business," instead of building the business. Words create illusions. They offer comfort instead of progress. They make you feel closer to your goal without actually earning proximity. The brain releases dopamine just from saying what you will do, so it loses the drive to actually do it. This is how dreams die, not with failure, but with applause for things not yet done. Keep your mouth shut. This is not weakness, it is not shame, it is not secrecy, it is sovereignty. You own your process, you protect it from the weather, from weak opinions, from shallow validation, from the well-meaning distractions of those who do not carry your vision. And when the time comes, when the work is complete, when your goal is not a whisper but a weapon, then you strike. Without warning, without explanation, without apology, and they will ask, where did this come from? And the answer will be, you never needed to know. So now you understand. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it is a weapon. But here's what most people get wrong. They think silence is passive, that staying quiet means staying still, that by not sharing, they are doing nothing, and that is precisely why they fail. Machiavelli would laugh at such simplicity. In The Prince, he reminds us that a wise man does at once what a fool does at last. Silence is not a delay, it is a strategy. It's not that you're doing nothing, it's that you're doing everything without announcing it. Every hour you stay quiet is an hour your competitors are exposed. Every day you withhold your moves is a day others reveal theirs. The man who shares is handing out a map. The man who listens is building one. There's a reason war generals do not broadcast their attacks before they strike, because to win you must surprise, and to surprise you must conceal. A publicly declared goal loses its edge. It's no longer a dagger. It becomes a dull object for others to prod, examine, and question. And yet modern culture pushes the opposite. We celebrate the reveal, the announcement, the big dream tweet. But Machiavelli did not play for applause. He played for advantage, and the advantage belongs not to the loud, but to the quiet. Let me show you the psychological damage of sharing your goals. When you tell someone your dream, they give you a response. That response, no matter how minor, becomes a mirror. If they are skeptical, you begin to doubt. If they are dismissive, you shrink. If they are supportive but fake, you feel empty. And in all these cases, your emotional energy has been compromised. This is why silence is not weakness, it is armor. The world is not built to support ambition. It is built to normalize mediocrity. And when you express something beyond the norm, you activate a kind of social immune system. People will subconsciously attack what they don't understand. Not because they hate you, but because your ambition reminds them of their own stagnation. Machiavelli saw this clearly in courts and kingdoms. Every prince had enemies, but more dangerous than enemies were the courtiers, those who smiled, nodded, and waited for their moment. These are the people around you today. Friends who mean well, but secretly hope you don't change too much. Peers who cheer for your growth, so long as it doesn't outpace theirs. They'll never say it aloud, but their energy will betray them. And once you've shared your goals, they are now invested in your outcome. This is no longer your private path. It has become a performance, and performance kills authenticity. You stop refining your vision based on truth and start adjusting it based on reaction. You seek likes instead of progress, reassurance instead of mastery, and little by little, your mission becomes theirs. Your dream becomes fragile. So what is the Machiavellian response? Do not perform, do not announce, build beneath. Let your vision ferment in silence. Let your goals sharpen in the shadows. Work without telling anyone, not your parents, not your friends, not your audience. Let them believe whatever they wish. You do not owe them a press release. In fact, the less they know, the more power you hold. They will underestimate you. Let them. They will misread you. Let them. They will assume you are stagnant. Let them. Because every miscalculation they make in your favor is an advantage in yours. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he didn't hold a press conference. He moved swiftly, quietly, decisively, and by the time the world reacted, it was too late. That is how you act when your goals are real. Not in words, in silence, in movement. Now let's speak of energy. Sharing your goals disperses it. You spend energy telling others instead of becoming. You feel momentarily satisfied by their encouragement, which softens your internal drive. And worst of all, you become addicted to external reaction. That is not the energy of a ruler. That is the energy of a performer. But if you keep your energy contained, if you feed it to your craft, your discipline, your structure, then you become something else entirely. You become focused, relentless, dangerous. Machiavelli said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Understand what he meant. Words serve moments, but strategy serves outcomes. You owe no one a verbal contract about your future. You owe only results. This does not mean you never speak. It means you speak with precision. You speak after the work is done. You speak when silence is no longer useful. But until then, the mouth stays shut and the hands stay moving. Let your actions announce you. Let your results introduce you. Let your silence build the tension. So when you finally step forward, it is not with hope, but with certainty. Because by then the path will be built, the product will be formed, the reputation will echo before you even enter the room, and they will ask, "How long have you been working on this?" And you will answer, "Long enough to not need your permission." That is power. That is strategy. That is the Machiavellian way. So by now you see the truth. Silence isn't absence. It's preparation. It's protection. It's positioning. But let us go deeper. Why is it that the moment you share a goal, you feel exposed? Because you are. You've taken something internal, intimate, and handed it over to the outer world, where it no longer belongs only to you. And worse, you've given others the right to weigh in, to comment, to critique, and they will. Not because they know better, but because now they can. Machiavelli taught that the wise ruler reveals only what is necessary. That power is preserved not by transparency, but by control. And control begins with discretion. The man who speaks too soon speaks from ego. The man who waits speaks from leverage. There's a pattern you must start to recognize. Those who achieve long-term success rarely speak during their climb. They speak only once the fortress is built. Their interviews come after the empire is secure, not before. Because when you speak too early, you activate forces of friction, jealousy, sabotage, doubt, imitation. And these forces are subtle. They don't come with red flags. They come with smiles, with casual questions, with helpful suggestions that dilute your focus and soften your intent. They come from people who seem harmless, because that's how influence hides. There is a Machiavellian principle buried in all this. Perception is power. And the more people see of your process, the more they believe they understand it. Once they believe they understand you, they stop fearing you. And once they stop fearing you, they stop respecting your potential. Understand this well. The man who is predictable is not powerful, he is manageable. If everyone knows what you want, where you're headed, what you're building, then they know how to position against you. They know when to move, when to wait, when to attack. That's not strategy. That's suicide. The fox survives not because it's strong, but because it's unreadable. And Machiavelli admired the fox for that very reason. A prince must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves, to be both cunning and bold. But the cunning always comes first, the silence before the strike. Let's now talk about resistance. The more people know your goals, the more resistance you face, not only externally, but internally. You begin to hear their voices in your head. You begin to carry their expectations. And now, your mission has weight. You feel watched, judged, evaluated. And that pressure shifts your actions from clarity to performance. But when no one knows, you are free. Free to pivot, free to fail, free to experiment without ridicule, free to rise without friction. Freedom is the true reward of silence. You are not bound by promises, not boxed in by labels. You are invisible and therefore untouchable. This is why the most powerful figures in history moved in shadows. They disguised their intentions. They spoke in riddles. They smiled while plotting, because they understood something we forget. Once your strategy is exposed, it can be countered. But when it's hidden, it owns the board. Think of your ambition as a piece of architecture. The deeper the foundation, the taller the structure. But what is the foundation built in? Silence, time, repetition, not declarations. Do not confuse visibility with progress. Let others post updates. Let them live stream their process. Let them receive the dopamine of public praise. And then, watch them collapse under the pressure of unfinished promises and unmet expectations. Meanwhile, you remain in motion, calm, steady, building layer by layer, while the noise above distracts everyone else. Machiavelli warned rulers not to be swept away by public affection. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous. Do not build your goals on their applause. Do not mistake cheers for support. They will cheer for you today and forget your name tomorrow. Your only true ally is silence. It does not betray. It does not weaken. It does not ask questions. It simply protects. And in that silence you grow. You make mistakes no one sees. You experiment with moves no one tracks. You evolve into a version of yourself no one can predict. That is true transformation. You see, there is a reason magicians never reveal their methods. Once the trick is known, the wonder is gone. And your goals, your ambitions are no different. The moment you over-explain, you turn strategy into spectacle. And spectacle dies the moment it's understood. Keep your magic hidden. Keep your plans sacred. because the more mystery you hold, the more influence you wield. Let others wonder, let them guess, let them whisper about what you might be doing, and while they talk, you execute. And when you finally emerge, not with words, but with undeniable results, they will not ask how you did it. They will ask when you did it, and your answer will be simple. When you were too busy watching, I was building. Now let us speak of interference. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the subtle forms, the ones that appear dressed as encouragement, as curiosity, as connection. It begins with a simple question: what are you working on? They ask with a smile. You answer politely. You describe your idea, your plan, your goal, and in that moment you feel seen. A small spark of satisfaction, but what you don't see is what you just traded: control. Because now they know, now they have a piece of it, and with knowledge comes access. They will begin to comment, to advise, to ask questions, not because they're trying to hurt you, but because that's what people do when they're given a glimpse. They probe, they shape, they pull you from the inside. And slowly the vision that once lived only in your mind is now shared real estate. You are no longer alone in it. You are no longer sovereign. Machiavelli warned against this kind of softness. It is necessary to be a fox to recognize traps, and there is no trap more dangerous than the one disguised as a friend's interest. Not because it's malicious, but because it's distracting. It fractures your concentration. It invites detours, and detours kill momentum. What was once a straight, silent path now becomes a maze of second guessing. You begin to ask, what would they think? You begin to wait for reactions before you act, and the worst part, you begin to doubt what you once knew with certainty. This is not strength, this is sabotage, and you allowed it. The more you share, the more you dilute. Think of it like pouring a strong wine into 10 glasses. What was once potent is now weak, spread too thin to have impact. Your goals must remain concentrated, kept in the dark like rare seeds until the roots are deep enough to withstand the sun. But here's where modern minds protest. They say, isn't it good to be accountable? To have someone know so they can check on you? Machiavelli would scoff at this. Accountability is not owed to others, it is owed to yourself. A ruler who needs others to keep him on track is not fit to rule. You don't build discipline through dependence, you build it through clarity and consequence. If you fail, let it be your own hand, not the weight of their expectations, that drives you to rise again. True power comes from being internally driven, not externally validated. Because here's the truth, the more people expect something from you, the more you start building for them. Not for your mission, not for your purpose, for their belief in you. And suddenly your path becomes a performance, a spectacle. Do not perform, execute, do not announce, deliver. This is how empires are built, not with noise, but with intention. Imagine this clearly. A man works in silence. No one sees him, no one asks. He declines to explain. He smiles but says little. While others boast, he sharpens. While others speak, he studies. While others seek attention, he collects leverage. And then one day he arrives, complete, composed, irrefutable. Not because he asked for applause, but because he earned it in solitude. Now contrast that with the man who shares every step, every plan, every launch. His audience cheers him on. They say, "You've got this." They mean well, but with every cheer, his hunger fades. He begins to feel full, without having eaten. And then when the execution fails, he is forced to explain, to make excuses, to reframe the timeline, to reassure those he never needed to involve in the first place. Now he is not just dealing with failure, he is managing perception. That is a loss of freedom, a loss of time, a loss of focus, and it is entirely avoidable. Machiavelli said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." Understand what he's saying. Plans change, strategies evolve, and if you've already spoken, you're now chained to a version of the plan that may no longer serve you. Silence gives you permission to adapt, to pivot, to grow without explanation, and that freedom is priceless. But let's go even deeper. Let's talk about the power of mystique. The less people know, the more they wonder. The more they wonder, the more they respect. And the more they respect, the more they hesitate to interfere. Mystery creates space, it creates distance, it creates the illusion of depth, even before it is earned. And in the game of power, illusion is half the battle. You do not need to be great to appear great. You need only be unreadable. Silence builds the myth, noise destroys it. So train yourself to speak less, to smile more, to observe longer, to reveal only what cannot be used against you. Because everything you say becomes a tool. In the hands of the wrong person, it becomes a weapon. and in the hands of someone close, it becomes betrayal. Do not hand out the blueprint to your kingdom. Build it behind walls, and when it stands, let them try to guess how you did it. Let them guess where the gate is. Let them guess where you began. Let them guess, because guessing gives you time, control, superiority. Machiavelli understood this game. He saw how perception moved kings and controlled empires. And the first rule of perception is this: control what they know, and you control what they do. So let them speak, let them share, let them live loud and fall hard. You stay quiet, because you are not here to be understood. You are here to become undeniable. There comes a point in every pursuit where doubt creeps in, not because you are weak, but because you are alone. The path of silence is not glamorous, it is not easy, it is not celebrated, it is lonely, disciplined, and misunderstood. And that is precisely why it works. You must learn to walk this path without applause, without reassurance, without someone checking in. Because if you truly want something to become real, it must be forged in solitude first, before the world sees it, before the world touches it. Machiavelli would remind you, men judge more by the eye than by the hand. They believe what they see, not what you say. So what use is there in talking when you could be creating something they cannot deny? You will be tempted to explain, to clarify, to justify your silence. Resist it, because the minute you begin explaining your absence, you begin breaking your power. The mysterious man owes no explanations. He simply moves, and in time, they understand. He was building. Understand this deeply. Every time you speak, you give shape to expectation, and every expectation becomes a prison, a deadline, a performance, and soon you're no longer building your goal, you're maintaining their illusion of your progress. But when you stay silent, you stay fluid, flexible, unbound. You can evolve without resistance. You can stumble without shame. You can change your entire approach without having to make announcements. This is the advantage of quiet power. You are not burdened by the image of progress. You are focused on actual progress. Now consider the predators of this world, not in the jungle, but in business, in power, in relationships. They are not loud, they are not visible, they are patient, they are observant, they wait, and when the moment is right, they strike, not with noise but with precision. Machiavelli admired this kind of cold timing. He didn't romanticize bravery, he studied effectiveness. And effectiveness, more often than not, moves without a sound. Let others walk loudly. Let them declare what's coming. Let them promise, predict, perform. You sharpen your edge in the dark. And here's a secret you must know. Silence intimidates. People are unnerved by those they cannot read. They project onto you. They assume. They fear what you might be capable of. That fear, it is leverage. Because power is not always about what you do. It is often about what people think you can do. And if they don't know your plan, your reach, your strength, then they cannot prepare for it. They cannot defend against it. They cannot diminish it. So say nothing. Let them guess. They'll ask, "What are you working on?" You smile. They'll say, "You've been quiet lately." You nod. They'll push, "Anything exciting coming?" You change the subject, not because you're weak, but because you're dangerous. Because there's something growing beneath the surface, and they have no idea how far it's come. Silence is not empty. It is full of direction, discipline, detachment. It is a crucible where real goals are forged, unpolluted by reaction. But now let me speak to your fear. The fear that if you don't share your goals, you'll drift, lose focus, fall behind. That is the lie of a weak mind. That is the lie of someone who depends on pressure from others to move forward. That is not leadership. That is dependence disguised as ambition. You must learn to self-generate fire, to move without eyes on you, to get up when no one cares, to stay locked in, not for applause, but because you said you would. Because the mission is real to you. This is the power of internal clarity. It doesn't need affirmation. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need to be posted or liked or shared. It simply is, steady, unshaken, focused. And when the world finally sees what you've been building, they won't believe it happened overnight. They'll say it was sudden, unexpected, fast, but you will know the truth. It wasn't fast. It was built during thousands of silent mornings, quiet nights, lonely decisions, days when no one asked, months when no one noticed, years when no one clapped. That's how real power rises, in the shadows. Machiavelli knew this truth centuries ago. He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. And in today's world, people deceive themselves. They confuse expression for progress, talking for doing, visibility for power. Let them leak their strength in the form of updates. You will move in silence, you will build in silence, you will arrive in silence, and when the door finally opens and they see what you've done, there will be no questions left. Because the results will speak a language louder than any words you could have ever offered. So if you find yourself tempted to share your next step, don't. Take it instead, and let the sound of your footsteps be the only announcement they ever get. There is a reason the most dangerous people you'll ever meet are the quiet ones, not because they are hiding weakness, but because they are hiding discipline. The man who speaks little, who moves with intention, who smiles without revealing his mind, he is the one shaping the world in silence. While others are loud, distracted and exposed, he is building something beneath the surface, something real, something irreversible. Machiavelli would nod at this. He would tell you that power is not merely about action, but about timing, perception, and restraint. He would tell you that silence is not absence, it is concentration, it is density, it is potential, waiting for the right moment to become kinetic. And so we return to the beginning. Why is sharing your goals the worst thing you can do? Because it feels good, and that's the trap. It gives you a shortcut to satisfaction, but real satisfaction does not come from being seen. It comes from becoming the kind of person who does not need to be seen, because the work is enough, the process is enough, the mastery is enough. You don't need to say you're building an empire. You need to build one, and when you do, you won't need to explain anything. The doors will open, the results will speak, the silence will finally make sense. But until then, stay hidden, guard your path. Let no one near it until the path is strong enough to carry the weight of their eyes, their opinions, their expectations. You owe no one your timeline. You owe no one your draft. You owe no one your beginning. Your story is still being written, and every time you protect it with silence, you sharpen the ending. Now listen closely. There will come a time when you're surrounded by noise, by pressure, by temptation to prove, to share, to seek validation. And in that moment, you must remember this truth. You don't rise by being loud. You rise by being consistent in silence. They will not see you coming. That is the point, because when you finally arrive, you will be undeniable. Not because you asked for attention, but because you made attention irrelevant. And now if you've made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready for this new path. A part of you has already understood that being celebrated means nothing, if in exchange, you must abandon your own process. That real power begins the moment you choose to walk alone, on your own terms, by your own timing. So now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be ignored, misunderstood, even dismissed, in the name of your inner strength? Are you ready to pay the price of becoming untouchable? If this message touched you, if it awakens something real, write it now. I choose silence. Let's see how many of you are truly ready for that transition. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It matters more than you think. I'll meet you there.